Good morning, members of the Committee of Petitions, members of Parliament, support staff, radio listeners, TV viewers, those following via social media, and members of the media. Welcome to the continuation of committee meeting number 3 of today, Wednesday, August 30th, 2023. We have established a quorum of 4 factions. Please let us stand for a moment of silence. We have received notice of absence from the following committee members: MP Grisha Heilaga Martin, MP William Marlin, MP Sitart Bijlani, and MP Christopher Emmanuel, and notice of lateness. Well, he's not a member of the committee. Sorry. Today, on behalf of my family and I would like to extend my heartfelt condolences to my colleague and friend, Ms. Jamie Lee, to my cousins, Destiny and Tristan, Miss Corina and family, friends, schoolmates, and teachers of the late precious Justice Peterson. We are truly saddened by his passing and cannot express properly in words how we feel and the impact this has on the entire community of St. Martin. We all pray that the good Lord will continue to give everyone impacted and touched in one way or the other the much needed strength at this time. We now move on to notifications. Are there any notifications? MP Bryson.
Yeah, okay. Good morning, Madam Chair, my colleagues here, and those in the Tribune and those viewing. Indeed, first of all, to echo the sentiments of you, Madam Chair, condolences to Jamie, a friend for a very long time, but a family member in our Parliament. Condolences for that grave loss that has been suffered by her. However, also more related to this meeting, and it's not really maybe the agenda point, but that's why I wanted to say it as a notification. I took note of a court verdict recently in which what I would find probably one of the strangest court cases I've ever seen, where the central bank, owned by the governments of Curaçao and St. Martin, that is the managing director of Enya Caribe Holding, took the government to court due to a topic that we are discussing here today, developments that took place, in their opinion, that should not have taken place, or building permits that should not have been granted, and the court case was thrown out by the judge. I think that's a very interesting case for many reasons. We have had such cases where people have, local business people have been taken Mullet Bay, formerly under Ansari, now under the central bank, to court and have had similar success in defending themselves. So I think to add some context for what we're discussing here today, that more recently, and I don't know if the minister was going to touch on that a little bit, that there was a court case and the judge did throughout the court case not in favor of the plaintiffs, but rather of the defendants. So just to add some context before we go into this discussion, as I think that is something that the minister should also touch on. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, MP Bryson. MP George Ponteflet, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning to you, my colleagues in Parliament, of course, of the committee, our honorable ministers present, those that are sitting in the tribune, and those that are viewing or listening by the available medium. Madam Chair, too, as yourself and also my colleague expressed, I too want to join in expressing my deepest sympathy and condolences to our friend, I would also call it colleague Jamie Lee, and the loss of her son and also their family. Madam Chair, you know, there are never words enough to express the pain that I'm sure that she's going through, her family is going through. And I believe at this time especially, we should give as much support as possible. And I think that in life, there are things that we do not expect, that we we don't want to face, but it happens. And I think that there are many reasons we can discuss and say as to why it happened. The issue is that it is something that should never have happened. It is something that is happening, I believe, even among youths too often, not only in St. Martin, but all over the world. And we should look and see exactly what are the root causes of these things. Social workers, parents, peers, all of us should pay attention to what is happening amongst us and around us. So again, Madam Chair, deepest sympathy condolences for my family, of course, to the family of Jamie Lee Peterson. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, MP George. I see no need for further notifications. The agenda point for this committee meeting is the discussion with the concerned ministers related to the petition regarding the objection to recent developments and future developments on Mullet Bay Beach, IS 758, 2021-2022, dated April 7, 2022. We go over to the agenda point. On April 7, 2022, Parliament received a petition regarding objection to the recent developments and future developments on the Mullet Bay Beach from Ms. Nina Beinsdorp with 2,760 signatures from residents of St. Martin. They would like to object to the recent developments and future developments on Mullet Bay Beach. With the request was attached the following for your review: the letters submitted to Vromi and Teyat, the petition objecting to recent and future developments, the cover letter, the petition signatures, the petition comments by those who signed. This meeting was adjourned on February 23, 2023, due to a lack of quorum. A few members of Parliament had to attend a video call of a petite committee that was regarding the geschillenregeling. But the ministers did promise to send the answers in writing. Parliament did not receive the promised answers on February 23, 2023. Hence, the ministers were invited to come and answer the questions today, Wednesday, August 30th, 2023, that several members of Parliament posed on February 23, 2003. I would now like to give the floor to our Honorable Minister of Teyat, Mr. Lambrix, to answer the questions posed by the members of the committee. Minister, you have the floor.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Oh, sorry. Good morning, Madam Chair. Good morning, MPs. Good morning, Tribune. Before I start, I would also like to give my condolences to Ms. Jamie Lee Peterson and her family. I think everyone already expressed what there is to express. I'm personally lost for words. As a parent, you know, it's something unimaginable, I think, to face. And, you know, I wish them much strength, her and her family. And that, you know, even if we don't know each other personally on that level, you know, I am always here personally also to assist her, to help her, to have a leaning shoulder, you know, that we all need it sometimes. But back to the meeting. The first questions were from MP Gums. It was an amendment made to the beach vending policy, and was there any consultation? After I checked within the ministry, I did find out from my research that there was no publication or consultation done on the amendment that was made back in 2014. There was one extra operator that was added to Mullet Bay, but I'll follow up on that with the further questions that go a little deeper into it. The second question was not really directly for me, so Minister Vromi will answer that. The third one also. The fourth one, how are decibels for sound and the use of lights being enforced that it can be hazardous to wildlife? For sound, we have a residential economic policy. We follow the guidelines of those policies. It clearly outlines what decibel to what decibel for if it's a mixed community, so if it's residential and businesses, or if it's just residential, what it is. It also specifies if it is live music, what the decibels are allowed to go to and what it's not allowed to go to. So those are the guidelines that we do follow. When it comes to the light, coincidentally it came up with me and my colleague ministers this week concerning light pollution. There is no active policy at the moment from what I have found out thus far within TIAT, neither Vromi or Justice, that outlines anything for light. It is something that we are looking into. there are people, you know, out with epilepsy. You have these flashing signs. I myself, just to give a little history, was born with epilepsy. I grew out of it at the age of 16. Recently on my vacation, I saw that the lights are still affecting me also, so I can understand, you know, that point, and it is something we will be looking into. Moving on to the questions of MP Williams. Has a letter of petition been sent to the Ministry of TIAT, and are you aware? Up to when I just got into office, I was not aware of this letter. I found out in my first meeting that we've had earlier in the year about this petition, and that was the first time that I personally found out about it. The second question was the minister aware of the petition? It's the same as the first question, kind of, so it's no, I was not. Minister of VROMI, it refers to the beach policy of VROMI. Is there any collaboration between VROMI and TIAT with the beach policies? We have started in the ministerial meetings with our staff and ourselves to kind of create a guideline moving forward to avoid certain situations from reoccurring, and that is still in the works. What is the ministry's position on building structures on the beach, taking into account the civil code? Everyone that comes to TIAT to request a business license, vending, it can be water sports, it can be a restaurant, no matter what. Once it's on the beach, we always recommend and we always, you know, make sure to enforce that we tell the applicant that no permanent structures will be allowed on the beach. It will always have to be something that is movable or quickly being able to move, and not permanent concrete and these kind of things. But that is, again, something we recommend, but we... the next question, the Nature Foundation, that is something for VROMI. The next one is government, is it not requirement when it pertains to buildings and the like? That is also for VROMI. The next one is petitioners, objectors have been filed with government. Have they been responded to? No, unfortunately, the objection was never forwarded to the department responsible for the handling of this objection initially, because the time frame to receive that objection was passed. So we got it via, I believe, Parliament, and we are now here still in Parliament continuing this conversation. Can the plan and priorities for the next 100 days be shared with Parliament? The plans, for me, if it is for my personal 100 days in office, they were published in the Daily Herald. Of course, you know, things change. As you get into office, you see new challenges, you see new things that pop up, and of course, we can deviate a little bit from it, but that original plan can be found if you look back at the Daily Herald. Reference has been made regarding the beach policy. Is there any collaboration alignment between the beach policy with VROMI? As I just explained, we have started sitting together with the two ministries and interministerial, making sure that we take the right steps. Who receives the initial application, who approves what first before it goes on to another one, and then, you know, we make sure that we don't overstep any boundaries and collaboratively do the right thing. Have the objectors been responded to? Not by TIAT, because the objection was never forwarded to the relevant department for handling. MP Duncan, the government philosophy in the environment and economic development, the balance between economic development and environmental protection. This was also a question asked by MP De Wever, so this is an answer for both. The Ministry of TIAT is cognizant of the current stage of developments in St. Martin and has recognized the need for dialogue on the development challenges that we are experiencing, specifically the continued growth, including expansion of the business, especially entertainment business as an example, against the direct surroundings of these businesses, having residents, visitors in proximity. Results, an increase of complaints. The matter being the development challenge of dealing with the balancing of commercial development and residential areas, whereby the buildings and area are considered mixed use. So this goes back to the REP report. It has that in there also, and it tells you what the levels are for those areas. This must be seen against the background of tourism-based economy, where some visitors come for entertainment and some come for rest and relaxation. So we have to try to find a balance between the two. On a larger and broader scale, economic development, including our building structures, is resulting in persons, families, building homes, businesses, etc., in areas that result in more hard surfacing of roads compared to less concrete roads, etc., results in higher probability possible flooding, problems, and rainfall developments and weather extremities. Given the above mentioned, as a new minister in TIAT, I must indicate that we are having these discussions internally and they are not completely finalized. The next question was, have permits been issued for 5 establishments? Is this true? Indeed, we do have 5 establishments in Mullet Bay. One has a vending license for food and beverage and beach chairs and umbrellas. 2 have business licenses and operating licenses for bar and restaurant. 1 has a business license for water sports and beach activities. 1 has a business license for beach chairs, umbrellas, snorkel gear, and massage services. And most recently, something turned up in my files that I was researching when I was looking at Mullet Bay, is that from 2014, we also have an additional vendor that was overlooked. This vendor also has water sports. This vendor also has space for a restaurant and his license, and space allocated back in, I'm not 100% sure, but over 10 years ago, before 2014. They were originally a vendor that was on the boardwalk, and they requested a move, and the move was granted back then. What is the philosophy of government? Reference beach development and the M-Bay for all beaches. This goes back again to the answer that I gave for Ms. Williams earlier, MP Williams, sorry. Does government plan to issue any more permits for Mullet Bay? No. Simply we're not, I think also I'm in agreement that we are at the cap. We're not looking to continue. Will we engage in public survey about public beaches being developed and or whether they should be developed? The idea is certainly that we have public consultation about the issue, as it is imperative that we receive input from our community and the various parties of interest. And then we can also, of course, make the right decision, keeping everyone in mind. The following question was a VROMI question. Will the impact of assessments be done? Excuse me. The next one also, will VROMI amend the beach policy? Also for VROMI. We go on to the questions of MP Pontiflet. St. Martin Beach and vending policy. How often are controls done on the beaches to ensure compliance according to their license? Economic controls are done, I would like to say every day. Of course, that is maybe overstepping a little bit, but at least weekly it is done that they go out to each area and check on these and make sure that we are up to date. Who makes the reports? Have the fines been given? The reports are made by the controllers of TIAT inspection. Fines, of course, we do give fines, but we also always give a warning first, so fines are not always the immediate solution. Sometimes we find out what the problem is, we give them the guidelines, give them a few days to correct it, and then, of course, if not, yes, definitely fines will be given. The next question, issue of DV Little Bay, that is also a VROMI question. What were your findings when you walked through Phillipsburg Beach? My findings up until this weekend when I went through Phillipsburg Beach, which is, I believe, the Great Bay, the boardwalk, and from my investigating is that we have 40+ vendors on that beach. We have over 1,500 beach chairs. We have multiple water sports. Right now, from my ministry and with my directive, I have instructed my team to geo-tag all of these people. So just like VROMI has with land that we can see, so we can also see on the beaches now where these actual people are, and start tying it to the license so that easily it can be seen, yes, they are valid, they're not, and you can see if someone is, squatting or trying to just do business without having a proper permit. Going on to the MP Bijlani's questions. How was the decision to approve the development made, and what criteria were considered in making decision? When the Ministry of TIAT receives a request for an operating license, the public is informed of such application through a publication in a newspaper. In this specific case, the Ministry received one objection and sought advice from our colleagues in the Ministry of VROMI with reference to the objection. As the objection was not related to TIAT, but VROMI-related matter, the court had already ruled on. The Ministry saw no reason to deny the license for the business, and yeah, they were given the license. What is the government's plan to ensure that Mullet Bay development does not harm the environment or local community? As I mentioned, I'm not seeking to have any further development on Mullet Bay Beach at this time, or I don't see it feasible. So that is one step already, that we are not worrying about future because we're not implementing any new licenses there. But we are looking, at what's going on there, again, seeing how we can possibly place everyone decently and making sure that everybody has their space and that everything works accordingly and keeping also the environment in mind. What measures are placed to ensure the developers are held accountable from any negative impacts? That is also a VRMI question. How will the government balance the economic benefits of Mullet Bay development with concerns raised by the residents and environmental groups? The Ministry of TIAT is aware that we need balance and concerns of all parties. I think it came up from MP Bryson that, you know, we did have a court case also, so, you know, seeing how we are handling it, that maybe it is not in line with opinions of everyone, but it is, I guess, because of the court case proven again that, you know, we are doing the right thing and taking the right steps. So, you know, we continue to do that, and we continue to keep all in mind, and we continue to keep moving forward. What role does the government see for public participation in the decision-making process for Mullet Bay development, and how will the public input be taken into account? The Ministry of TIAT will continue to engage in consultations with internal parties, namely the Minister of ROMI, as well as the Nature Foundation, and will provide opportunity for the public to also review revised draft policies once all feedback has been incorporated. So it will be shared. How will the government ensure that Mullet Bay development projects and future projects align with the... So this is a little bit redundant with some of the other questions that I've answered. We're not looking to continue developing on the actual beach, you know, with what is there already. We are looking to make it more, like I said, workable, and that it looks a little more organized, and then that everything is set up better. And also geotagging, like I said, but for future, we're not looking to increase. What lessons has the government learned from the previous development projects in St. Martin, and how will these lessons be applied to the Mullet Bay development? The Ministry of TIAT has adopted the best practice approach to future developments and policies, which includes involving the local community and relevant stakeholders, identifying the potential risk and developing strategies to mitigate them, monitoring and evaluating the project's impact and aligning the relevant ministries. So again, that is the step we've taken already with interministerial meetings and ways forward. What steps have been taken by government to address the concerns raised by the community members about the project? How will the government work to rebuild trust with the residents who feel their voices are not being heard? Again, I don't think that we should say that the voices are not being heard. I think we are hearing everyone's voices, but we have to find a middle ground, and we have to, you know, understand that sometimes development is needed, and of course not too much, and put a stop to it when it is time to put a stop on it, and that is what we are intending to do. MP Peterson, those questions were all, according to me, VROMI questions. So I pass it over to Minister of VROMI. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. I now give the floor to the Minister of VROMI. You have the floor.
Good morning, Madam Chair Lady. Good morning to my colleague Minister. Good morning to the honorable members of Parliament, and a special good morning to the people of St. Martin. Madam Chair, although it was echoed enough, I cannot go without also expressing my sincere condolences on behalf of my family to Jamie. I know that is something that none of us can ever imagine to ever have to deal with, and I just want to wish the family much strength in this difficult time as the island mourns the loss. I'll delve right into the questions posed. I'll start with questions posed by MP Gums. Is there a concrete way to protect public beaches? Share if both ministries have begun discussing on this topic. Currently within the Ministry of VROMI, the protection of our beaches are regulated through the VROMI Beach Policy. This provides regulations of minimum setbacks for high water line. In addition, further prevents developments from physically having a negative influence on the recreative use of the beach by ensuring that all beaches must have a usable and easily accessible for residents as well as visitors. Construction on the beach are also prohibited through the Building Ordinance, Article 22, which entails the denial for grounds of a building permit. In paragraph 2 and 5 are of importance here. Paragraph 5 of the building, of part of the building will, due to its location or the construction method, disfigure or the environment or a nuisance or fire hazard for the environment. In paragraph 2, a permit can be denied if in connection with construction method used, the building cannot be considered to have such a solidity that does not endanger the lives of the residents or users or the environment. A decision to grant a conditional building permit to or refuse in its whole shall always state the reasons on which it's based and may only be based on one or more of the following circumstances. If the beach is known to be a sea turtle nesting beach, then this is taken into consideration when evaluating the development. Sea turtles are protected species in accordance with the Landsverordening Grondslagen, Natuurbeheer en Bescherming, Article 8A and Article 11. Therefore, requirements for the protection of sea turtles are included in building permits on beaches known for sea turtle nesting. Rental agreements also specify that any developments cannot be of permanent nature and that a daily fines can be applied if the terms of the rental agreements are denied. I'm specifically talking about rental agreements that are granted by the Ministry of Environment. How much do the establishments on the beach pay for the usage, and when last were the fees revisited? For vendor 1, they pay 12,000 guilders a year. Vendor 2, 7,200 guilders. Vendor 3 also pays 7,200 guilders. And the 4th vendor currently now pays 6,000 guilders. The fees mentioned has not been revised since the issuance of the above rental agreements. Next question posed. Are the establishments in compliance with what is in the agreement and what has been allotted to them, and how many square meters are they allowed to use? The Ministry of Environment is currently not aware of any sort of violations within the issued rental agreements on Mullet Bay Beach. A site location map with sizes of the area and square meters was also previously provided to Parliament. However, I'll just delve back into it. Vendor 1 has 1,000 square meters. The second vendor has 600 square meters. The third also 600. And the 4th vendor has 500 square meters. I move on to question posed by MP Westcott Williams through you, Madam Chair Lady. How do both ministries view the stipulations and the requirements of the policies? The Ministry of Environment applies all relevant policies when assessing new requests for land or building permits. In connection with the management agreement signed with the government and the Nature Foundation, is it not required to have the Nature Foundation consulted first? Based on the SLA with the Nature Foundation, Environment can request the foundation to carry out rapid terrestrial and marine assessments when new developments are being proposed. The SLA does not mention that prior to any development, consultation with the Nature Foundation is required. However, when there are concerns about effects of certain developments on the nature and the environment, the ministry always requests rapid assessments from CIMAT Nature Foundation prior to decision making. Have the petitions been responded to? The ministry responded to Parliament on the petition that was sent. I move on to questions posed by MP Duncan. What is the government's philosophy on the protection of beaches? Are there any joint working groups? No, there are not any joint working groups working on it, but the policies do align with what I mentioned prior. Are there any policies of the both ministries aligned? Are the policies of the both ministries aligned? The recent updated beach and vending policy that is currently taking place by TIAT will be aligned with the Vromi beach policy, and the Nature Foundation were also parts of the review process in the vending policy. As I mentioned, this is still ongoing and is currently being finalized. We do meet on a regular basis. We have had 3 consultation meetings for this year thus far, and we are working and doing our best to make sure that both ministries align when it comes to this subject matter and other subject matters as well. Is it the intention of government to issue more permits on Mullet Bay Beach? As my colleague mentioned, in 2000, 2013-2014, a license was issued by the then government where the person was granted almost 300 square meters for usage. This was never executed and obviously overlooked when the initial 4 rental agreements were issued back in 2019. Therefore, we are currently in discussion with our board ministries and the legal to find out how we can move forward with this, but it seems as if government will be bound to honor this request, as we have received recent communication requesting such. Is it the intention of the ministry to amend the beach policy? Yes, it is our intention to update the beach policy. However, this plan of action is dependent on our internal capacity and priorities. Through you, Madam Chair, I move on to questions posed by MP Bijlani. How was the decision to approve the development made, and what criteria was considered in the decision-making process? A decision to approve a development, specifically a building permit, is based on an advice to the minister that is made by the Building Permits Department. To make up a final advice, the Permits Department will evaluate the building permit requests, including all documents submitted. In addition, the Permits Department will request a report from the Inspection Department if needed. The Policy Department is also required to advise if this is needed as well. The main policies and legislations that are considered in advising process are the bouw en woningverordening, the hinderverordening and hinderbesluit, the bouwbesluit, which is the building code, the landsverordening ruimtelijke ontwikkeling, which is the zoning ordinance, and if applicable, the beach policy, the hillside policy. Also, the parking policy. If requested, a rapid assessment or a nature and environmental assessment can be requested, as I mentioned before, to be done and carried out by the Nature Foundation. What is government's plan to ensure that Mullet Bay development does not harm the environment or the local community? The Ministry of Romy, through the implementation and or enforcing of the relevant policies and legislation, the beach and parking policy, the building ordinance and code, waste and wastewater ordinance, the hinder ordinance, and also the nature ordinance, are ways and means to protect. Based on Article 28A of the LROP, the ministry can require a civil works permit for activities of profound nature, such as clear cutting and felling of vegetation, large excavation, filling and dredging of water. If the development poses serious and or irreparable threat to nature and environment, the minister can deny the civil works permit, thus denying the activities to be carried out, or add strict conditions to the building permit to minimize the negative impact on the environment. What does the government see for public participation in terms of decision-making for Mullet Bay development, and how will the public input be taken into account? All building permits are published in the National Gazette, the Lance Courant. The public has the right to appeal all issued building permits. In the future, a draft zoning plan for the area will be presented in a public hearing, whereby the public will have the opportunity to raise any questions and concerns that they may have. I will add to this point, Madam Chair, based on the point brought forward by MP Bryson earlier. Indeed, on Monday or Tuesday, I believe, we did receive the court verdict where Country St. Martin won. Basically, the EC Sun Resorts that file a court case against Country St. Martin with respect to currently operating business at the Mullet Bay. That was thrown out because they did not follow the proper procedures in terms of appealing the building permit at that time. So this is clear-cut evidence where this process is working. We've had other cases where persons appeal, and those are ongoing and are completed with regards to such. So there is opportunity for public to input in every single building permit. One thing I must also note is that back in the days, I cannot remember exactly, but I believe prior to 2017 or 2018, the building permits were not published. How will the government ensure that Mullet Bay development project aligns with the country's long-term sustainable development goals? The SDGs are incorporated into all plans and policies. Developments are then evaluated against these existing plans and policies. How will the government work to build trust with local residents who feel that their voices are not being heard in terms of the decision-making process for the Mullet Bay development? As I mentioned before, the ministry currently publishes all issued building permits in the Gazette, whereby the public has the opportunity to appeal issued building permits if they so desire. The ministry also feel that communication with residents is crucial in all phases of a project. The ministry can further engage in additional communication efforts, such as sharing information about any developments in the area in order to obtain feedback for consideration in terms of the decision-making process. These can be shared via town hall meetings to encourage open dialogue and provide opportunities for residents to express their opinions and suggestions. I move on to questions posed by MP Peterson. Since 2019, have there been any more licenses issued for Mullet Bay? The Ministry of Rummy does not issue licenses. However, it is in our purview to issue rental agreements. And as I mentioned before, a total of 4 rental agreements have been issued for the Mullet Bay Beach, of which 2 have also received building permits. Next question posed: if all permits were requested, can it be provided to Parliament through the confidential route? This was already done. I move on to questions posed by MP Westcott Williams. How does the ministry view the implementation of the building codes? The implementation of the new building code is aimed to enhance the safety and resilience of the structures against natural disasters, which we can surely say we have experienced in the past years on our island. With the reality we call global warming, we can expect bigger and stronger hurricanes, earthquakes, and the like. Our collective responsibility is to continue to safeguard the structures within our community. Our building code goes further than just the strength of physical structure, but also embodies practices that we sometimes take for granted. The new building code adopts elements of well-established international building codes to ensure consistency and compatibility with global construction norms. Recently, a building code training was organized by the ministry, where stakeholders, including architects, engineers, contractors, and the public, were invited to learn to discuss and partake in valuable discussions on the new code. This training, like other trainings in the past and trainings to come, will strengthen and enable the ministry to serve the public with a certain level of excellence. This plays a major role in our future developments for tomorrow. I would like to take this opportunity, Madam Chair, to thank all those involved in putting time in getting us to this point. Without your hard work and dedication, this will definitely have not been accomplished. Madam Chair, those are all the questions that I have for now, and I look forward to any clarifications needed. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Minister. I now look to the floor of Parliament, and I would like to know who would like to have the floor for any clarifications. I see, okay. MP Gums. MP Gums, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good afternoon now to you, for my colleagues, to the Minister and his staff, and the ministers and their staff, and those joining us in the Tribune. Right now, I just have, 2 questions, kind of, one to you, Madam Chair, if we're going to get these answers in writing, so that we can go over them at our leisure. And the second for the Minister of Rummy, regarding building permits. To my understanding, it was the intention that building permits be issued with a 2-year timeline on executing the permit by the recipient. I just want to know if this has been put in place, and if it has, then why were any 2013, 2014 permits not canceled? And if it has not, then why not? Because I do believe it's not logical to have a permit passed, let's say in the 90s, and then that's used to build a house or rebuild a house in 2023. So just if you could clarify that. And then the first question, I don't know if you've communicated with the ministers as yet. Thank you.
Thank you, MP Gums. I will look quickly to the ministers and ask if you can please provide us with the answers in writing. I see now MP Rayon would like to have the floor. MP Peterson, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A good afternoon now to yourself, through the Griffier, the Secretariat, to the honorable ministers here, to my honorable colleagues, and those in the Tribune, and everybody else tuned in. Madam Chair, the Minister of Romy said that the Ministry of Romy does not issue licenses, and that's true. So then I asked through you, Madam Chair, to the Minister of Teyat, if, basically the same question, if after the year 2018, if any Minister of Teyat issued a new license for whatever commercial activity on the location of the Mullet Bay Beach, and if so, which minister did this and which company received said license? And also, when did he request the license? And in light of the same question, a related question to the Minister of Romy, has that company requested a rental agreement to be on Mullet Bay Beach? And also another question pertaining to an answer from the Minister of Teyat through you, Madam Chair, is that a vendor was allegedly overlooked that received permission to change their location, I believe from town to Mullet Bay in 2013 or 14, as per the minister's statement. I would just want to know through you, Madam Chair, which company was that? Which of the vendors was that? And that'll be all from me for now, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, MP Peterson. MP Gums, you would like to have the floor quickly?
Yes, sorry, Madam Chair. A question that I did have for the Minister of Teyat, two things. When the development in question that is part of the petition's whole drive was being developed, there was a lot of talk by the then Minister of Teyat about how the Mullet Bay boardwalk would be rebuilt. Thus far, not a plank has been laid, so I just wanted to ask if there's an update on the status of that. And I also wanted to ask what was the, I guess, rationale. I understand that maybe the licenses must have been given for water sports or so, but if there was any documentation by the Minister of Teyat's predecessors as to the rationale for water sports at Mullet Bay. When I was younger, I think some of us in here, maybe, well, MP Duncan was so maybe remember that there was a young man tragically killed in a jet ski accident at Mullet Bay. There have been several accidents, whether with swimmers or the jet ski drivers themselves. So historically, Mullet Bay has never had water sports for that reason. So that's also my concern, because as the Minister of Rami said, and the Minister of Teyat, residents are supposed to be able to safely and comfortably use the beach. So I just want to know what rationale was taken up for that by their predecessors. Thank you.
Thank you, MP Gums. I will now look quickly to the ministers and give the floor to Minister of Romy. And then I will then give the floor to MP De Weaver. You have the floor, Minister.
Thank you, Madam Chair Lady. I would just like to rebut on the clarifications for efficiency purposes. Based on the question posed by MP Gums with respect to a building permit having a lifespan of 2 years, I've been getting this question a lot. Indeed, that is the case. However, we've seen situations where persons just do not have whether the proper or enough financing to start, and that is not a strict regulation or hard regulation that we impose as a ministry. Historically, it has never been done. However, I do agree with the point where if a building permit is issued over 10 years ago and it's going to be constructed now, we always follow up and we advise developers to update their plans to match the current situation. We've been faced with those things, but those things are really 1 in 50, so to speak, if that is ever the case, and it's handled on a case-by-case basis. And for clarification as well, I did not mention that a building permit was issued back in 2014 or 13, but I mentioned that a license was issued by Teyat with a specific amount of space that should be allocated by the Ministry of Romy. So just to clarify that point, it was not a building permit in this particular situation. And the clarification from, oh, and the second clarification from MP Peterson with respect to rental agreement that was requested in recent years. Indeed, in I think it was 2 years or a year ago, a license was issued by Teyat and a rental agreement was requested by Vromi, but that has not been issued. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Minister. I now give the floor to MP De Weaver.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon to you, to my colleagues, to the ministers and their support staff here. because I received these questions from concerned citizens, I'm going to read them off verbatim, and then I'll get to mine at the end. But before I go, I think there's about 8 in total. I was trying to really go through and see when the ministers were answering, if they were covering some of the questions. I tried my best, but because we don't have them in writing, then it was very hard for me to kind of eliminate them. So my apologies if there is some duplication in it. Before I start, though, I will say that Minister Lambrix, the Ministry of Tayat did receive the questions, or the petition, sorry, the objection back on March 30th. I have a stamped document in case you want me to send that to you. I know you weren't there then, but the importance of continuity in government is that you would have received that. So I do have a paper trail for you that I can share with you afterwards. Going into the questions that I received, it was told that the petitioners did not receive a response to the objection. That is what I just clarified, in the fact that they did indeed send it in. There has been proof of it. I will share that with you. Once I have, hopefully they'll be able to receive their answers. What was the reasoning behind the amendment to the 2012 beach and vending policy signed off by the Minister of Tayat in 2014? Was the public involved in this decision, and otherwise, why would an amendment be made so quickly after the 2012 publication? Is this something we can revisit to stop further development on Mullet Bay? Number 3, when these policies change, such as the 2012 beach and vending policy, how is the public informed that there are now more plots or permits available to start a business? During our research, this seems to never have been clearly communicated by the government. The new development, Kalatua, was granted to persons with ties to the government and knowledge about the policy change in 2014. Why was this opportunity not published clearly so other locals could apply and benefit? One of the, just a little side note, one of the ways to protect Mullet Bay for the future is to reverse the amendment or renew it to allow only 3 establishments the only 3 establishments that are there and having stricter regulations for their beach chair usage, music volume, and lights at night. Next question, how much do the establishments on Mullet Bay pay in rent to the government for the use of public land or the beach to construct and operate their establishments? When were these prices last revised? If prime public beach is used to allow more businesses, the monthly lease and taxes should appropriately benefit the public. How much square meters of public beach is allotted to establishments to place beach chairs? How is this determined? How many beach chair rental companies are legally operating on Mullet Bay? I know that we mentioned that, so that may have been a repetition. How are the regulations for the decibels allowed, determined, enforced, and fined? In addition, one of the establishments turns on bright lights at night. You did mention it. Basically, what I would like to have an answer for is to see when that could be changed or if it will be taken into consideration when dealing with Mullet Bay. Because when I look at the answers as well received for answers that were sent by the Ministry of Rami, there was some mention of 7 p.m. closures. So it's a little bit in contradiction of Tayat policy. We asked for a revision, next question, we asked for a revision on how permit applications are published. Most development notices are only published in the Landscourant. The limited requirements for publicizing development are misused by developers to prevent public opposition or protest. And then the last one, another coastline is being prepared for sale and development in Kupakoi. Without proper government regulations and permitting, we are afraid that more beaches will be privatized by making it hard for residents to access the Kupakoi beaches and caves. This is similar to the cliff where you have to pass through security and have a hotel pass to get to the beach in that same area. Like I mentioned before I messaged this was various questions that I received from concerned citizens, some involved, some not involved. And I'm gonna now go through with mine. Now, we keep referring to a sustainable development plan for the country. And I know sometimes when I talk, maybe there's a question in there somewhere and it gets a little bit muddled with the message that maybe I have to say publicly. But in noticing that the Minister of Rami did mention a sustainable development policy, my question is, that sustainable development policy, what is the plan when it comes to hillside development as well as beach beachside, shoreline, or like, beach development? What is the policy on that? Because here's the contradiction that I see, right, that we do is we continuously allow businesses to exist. So we give permits for building on the hills. We give permits for building on the beach or existing on a beach where you are maybe potentially having detrimental effects on nature, right, on the environment. But then, so we're doing that as a government. We're giving people the right to do this, to build on a hill, to build on a beach. But then in the same breath, we go around and we ask that private sector to help us fix our problems. So we ask private sector, hey, we're allowing our hills to be eroded, right, to be excavated, which means that when it rains, it goes into the water. But then we're asking private sector to pay for the dredging in the water where we are allowing, we're given the permission. This is why it's absurd, again, for me. So you're giving a permit to do something, and then in the end, the same government that gives that permit goes and asks private sector for help. So this is where, when we're talking about sustainable development, the same applies to our hillside policy, to our beachside policy. Because when we do too much, then we end up going to private sector, the same people that we're granting those permits to. So my question is, again, what in the sustainable development goals, what in our sustainable development plan for the government includes protection of the beaches from further development and hillside for further development? Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you, MP De Weaver. I now give the floor to MP Bryson. MP Bryson, you have the floor.
I was first. Yeah. Good morning, good afternoon now, Madam Chair Lady, once again, and to my colleagues, and once again, good afternoon to all viewing. Madam Chair, I think this is quite a long process that we've had with this petition. I do think that at some point today, what I would like to note, maybe kind of as a point of order, is that additional questions are coming, and that's understandable. Members of Parliament will have additional questions, so do I. But we do have to consider that the petitioners officially now need to receive some sort of final response from this petition. So what I will also be proposing is that these questions that we have here, if they can just be somehow maybe done in writing, compiled, so that we can then prepare a response officially to the petitioners. And if there's a need for further discussion more on the sort of central committee or committee of Rummy setting where we have that discussion, maybe that might be necessary. But I do think that this process of the petition, for the respect to the petitioners, we need to put this, in my opinion, to a close today so that they can get their responses officially. We're happy that some of them are here so they can at least hear the interactions for themselves. But at some point, if they receive a final reply from the petitions committee, that would be great. I know I'm not a member of the committee. This is just my suggestion to members of the committee as well. When I look at this whole situation, and I find it so interesting, it's a little bit of deja vu, you know, where you have some members of Parliament that really, they're part of a party or whatever they are, but they have their opinion, no matter what the role of others within their own party might have played in putting us in some of these situations. Because when I look at this whole situation, it has to start somewhere. Where did the original idea for any restaurant to be granted the permission to operate on Mullet Bay start? Where did this begin? Did it start with a building permit? Did one day someone just say, here's a building permit for me to build something on the beach? Or was there a step before that? I think that would be the rental agreement, am I right? So there must have been granted by someone an agreement to say, here is your allotted amount of land, just to put it in very basic terms. And when you look, and actually, fortunately, this was actually sent to Parliament before. It is on the P drive, the rental agreement. And when you look at the purpose within the rental agreement, because I said, now, maybe this business went outside of the purpose, trying to play devil's advocate. And in the rental agreement, it mentions snack bar, restaurant, water sports, these type of things are mentioned, okay? So my first question to the Minister of Rami, did you issue these rental agreements? Did this government issue these rental agreements? Or is it, like was mentioned, in terms of continuity of government, where a previous minister from the signature I'm seeing here was Miklos Gitterson? If that was then granted by then, what recourse does the minister have after that? I would imagine, and this would be my question, in the building permit process, did we make sure that they didn't go over the number of square meters? Did they stick to the building ordinance? Are all of the things that were built removable? If the rental agreement is to end and not be renewed, will the beach be able to come back basically to how it was in terms of no permanent structure? Because that's what I find is important as well. But to act like this is just something that came out of nowhere, I think what the minister is highlighting here is so many governments, maybe very close to elections, saying, let's give this license now. We're talking about a license from 2014, for example. This is what happens, and then the next government has to come in and figure out how do we clean up this mess. It's unfortunate, and what I like that I've heard today is a definitive statement. No, this government is not going to issue any new licenses. So that can be put to rest. Okay? But the government has had to appoint based on what was actions that were taken in the past and somehow find a way, in my opinion, from my assessment, to be able to honor the agreements that were given in the past. Agreements that were bragged about. When we're discussing Mullet Bay and talking about the inquiry, I was told, you don't need no inquiry because we already give rental agreements, everybody good. But we don't realize that there's still some concerns from citizens based on what ultimately comes out of these agreements then. So my question would be to the minister, does the minister believe that the ministry in 2019 was ill-advised to issue rental agreements? Should not have stated restaurants should operate there. Should the ministry maybe have just said, no, all restaurants got to go? That would be one of my questions. Mr. Chairman, Madam Chair, sorry. I think what we have to do, and one thing I do find interesting is when we talk about we're giving the people the right to build on a beach. I think that building on beaches, if we're talking about building, I don't think any permanent structure should ever be on beaches. But I also don't think, and I believe this firmly, that private institutions that have no legal basis to lay claim to own to the beach, i.e. Sun Resorts, Mullet Bay, Enya, Central Bank, Ansari, they for years felt like they owned the beach. Now, of course, some cases have now shown that that is not the case. I've heard of still security guards from Mullet Bay attempting to harass people in terms of parking and so on. This is also something that I think has to be addressed by the minister, because that's why in my notification I call it the strangest court case I've ever seen. The central bank that is basically owned in part by the government is taking the government to court for actions that it took, which turned out, in terms of the administrative process, it was correct. So does the minister foresee this struggle continuing? Is there any dialogue with the central bank rather than doing this thing via court and figuring out who can and cannot be on the beach, and making it clear that the intention of the government is not to issue any further licenses, but they should respect the fact that they do not have a national ordinance allowing them to own the beach? Does the central bank not know our civil code, our laws? How does the central bank, who is the managing director of Enya Holding currently, who then owns Sun Resorts, feel that they have a right to the beach? Because that's what they're basically petitioning the court. That they should be the one to determine who can be on the beach or not even the government. So does that mean if Sun Resort suddenly feels like all those people have to go and they have to just build a hotel on the beach, that means because they think they own the beach, they can do that? Because today we're talking about restaurants that have been built with temporary structures. But Sun Resort seems to have a very, very different intention for what they want to do on that beach. And I'll deal with our local people that have businesses on the beach versus people that are tied to Ansari any time of the day. So I would like Madam Chair, like I've suggested, my answers, I understand that, like I said, I think the petition committee should seriously consider somehow getting this meeting to a close so that the petitioners can be answered. And then if this discussion needs to be handled further, we have a parliamentary inquiry going on. I can't go into those details, but I can imagine, I think anyone can imagine that these are some of the things that are going to come out of this report. But again, I want to stress, this started somewhere. And back then, it was okay. Back then, when they was in the position to advise yes or no, they said yes. But today, of course, it's a different story, and we're going to hear the excuse shortly. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, MP Bryson. I now give the floor to MP George Ponteflet.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good afternoon again. Madam Chair, I want to thank the Minister Lambrix for the answers to the question posed. I didn't have any questions for Minister Vroomy. Madam Chair, I always use this forum to sometimes make some points that might seem not related to the topic at hand, but I believe for me it is relevant. And I know it has to do with a petition concerning the permission to build on the beach and so on, who got what, who didn't get what, or whatever. But, Madam Chair, one of the main concerns I've had for years is the issue of landowners holding the people of St. Martin hostage. What am I talking about? Mullet Bay, which we are busy with, as my colleague before me stated, busy with an inquiry. Private land, it is said, owned by Mr. Ansari since Hurricane Lewis, 1995, so we're talking 28 years. A place that employed hundreds of employees, as a matter of fact, where I worked myself in time past also, where government could have been earning revenues in the millions in taxes. 28 years later, it is just a large piece of open land, nothing going on. But government has to fight now, after 20 years, in order to see if we get our land back. Madam Chair, another piece of land, also prime land, is the one at Great Bay. That is also a nice piece of prime land that nothing is happening with. And you know, Madam Chair, you know what's the hurtful part? You're told this is private land. If you go and try them to take it back, then they'll say, well, we're not friendly to investors. But at the same time, Madam Chair, we are losing millions in revenues because that place, for hotels rebuilt there, can ensure that we have many persons who are working and it turns into revenues. So, Madam Chair, it is something that I'm looking at because, again, when you're a tiny island, you know, and you're dealing with investors whose budgets are just as big as yours or bigger, you got to be cautious. And especially when they have friends abroad in big countries with deep pockets. Madam Chair, the reason why I mentioned the question of the fines to Minister Lambrix has to do with the issue of a notice that came out, I believe was in 2021, where the prosecutor's office, and I paraphrase, are having a problem collecting something like 1.7 million or 1.8 million guilders in outstanding fines that go as far back as 2017. That was 2021, so I do not know how much it is today. What am I saying? These are monies that are out there, Madam Chair, and the prosecutor's office is saying that probably it might be uncollectible. I went through it briefly. In 2017, the fine was 411,000 guilders, and they only collected 10,000 guilders. 2018, 337,000 guilders, nothing collected. 2019, 316,000 guilders, nothing collected. 2020, 750,000 guilders, nothing collected. But in 2021, they're telling us it's uncollectible. it might be uncollectible, Madam Chair. So, Madam Chair, these are the things that should not be allowed to continue. And the fact is, when you have the prosecutor's office saying that, then where do you go? Because they're the one responsible, Madam Chair. So, Madam Chair, as I said, the two issues that are bothering me has to do with the issue of how large investors can hold the people hostage and the issue of collecting fines. I believe that these things are serious, and I'm busy looking to see exactly where, because sometimes you have to look and see exactly what you can do in order to ensure, because unfortunately we are not an independent country like our neighbor, St. Kitts, and we know the story that goes way back where a particular investor wanted to claim the beach and was told by the then premier, I think, of St. Kitts to ask, he was asked, did you buy any or did you put any sand and any sea here? And they had to leave. So, Madam Chair, that's my comments for right now, and I read the answers that were posed by other colleagues because I believe they're very interesting questions, and I'll determine whether I should proceed further. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, MP Pontiflet. I give the floor to MP Gums.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just one last question from me for both ministers. Primarily the Minister of Rami. In the answers that were provided to the petitioners in the, I think, January of this year, there's a lot of legalese about there being no formal requirement for an advice from the Nature Foundation for a building permit, etc. So I just wanted to ask if it is the intention then of the ministry to actually make it a requirement, because we are an island, a small island. This side is 16 square miles. And I think it is no secret now that there is a majority of the population that is complaining about development and overdevelopment, etc. In particular, when we look at our beaches and the areas surrounding them. So I just wanted to know if, as part of the pending spatial development plan that was earlier presented, if that is also going to be a consideration to then make it a requirement that an advice from Nature Foundation is required for a building permit. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, MP Gums. I now give the floor to MP Duncan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon to you. Good afternoon to the ministers and everyone present and those watching via different media. Madam Chair, in the face of climate change and rising sea levels, we need to safeguard our beaches. In the face of us losing our natural heritage, in fact, both tangible and intangible heritage, we need to safeguard our beaches, our environment. In the face of a very historic and possibly significantly impactful court case, and also a historic parliamentary inquiry, again, we need to safeguard our beaches. I was happy to hear that consultations are taking place between the two ministries, but I must say again that there needs to be a permanent, whether it's a unit or a work group in government that deals with interministerial cross-sector policies. That is the only way we are going to move forward as a country in ensuring that licenses, rental agreements, whatever the case is, are looked at via all possible lenses and that everyone is on the same page. There is too much fragmentation in government, and that's why we see these problems. One ministry is doing this over here, the other ministry is over here, and at the end of the day, not only the people, but in my opinion, the environment is suffering. I also believe very heavily, Madam Chair, in consulting the public. Yes, leaders are elected, but you often wonder about their vision for the country. And that is why, actually, in my opinion, and we have a report, or at least a presentation that is going to come out from another committee about consultative referendums. Forget about, or not forget, but put aside, let's say, decolonization and independence. When are we going to start asking the people how they think this country should be developed? because they have an opinion too. They're the ones living and walking and swimming and doing everything every day. They're not in positions of power, but they have opinions. And so my belief is we really need to properly consult the public, not say, hey, listen, you know, look at the newspaper, and then if you have an issue with it, say something. No, we really have to look at asking our people where they think this country should go, and from there, hopefully creating proper policies. And that's just it for me, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, MP Duncan. MP Bryson? Not anymore? MP Peterson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I apologize in advance because we're going to be here for a couple more minutes. Because as you know, Madam Chair, I am not one for misinformation. And since one of the speakers before me, you know, it's unfortunate that he chooses to take the petitions committee, you know, to try to get political while double talking about respect for the petitioners. But I am here for the facts, and I'm sure that the petitioners also are going to want to hear the actual facts, rather than opinions which are clearly made to justify what is going on the beach, rather than actually fixing it. So let's go back, Madam Chair, to 2017, when Hurricane Irma hit, because we're talking about the history of Mullet Bay. After the hurricane, Sun Resorts, the same company that, you know, is doing all of these bad things, Sun Resorts decided to bulldoze the little structure that the York brothers had on the Mullet Bay beach. This was in 2017. When this happened, Sun Resorts basically blocked off Mullet Bay, saying that they own the beach, and they blocked off the access to it. I'm sure a lot of people remember this as well. When this happened, the good York brothers, who had a license to operate on Mullet Bay since the 90s, approached Vromi. They came to us. We could not do anything because Sun Resorts is a third party. So what did we do? And we can check this with them as well. They came to the Department of Domain Affairs, and we personally advised them to take it to court. We gave them the arguments that say, I think it's Article 25 of the Book 5 of the Civil Code, 25 or 26, it says that the beaches are government property. We advised them to take it to court, and they did. In 2018, when the change of government came, when the NA faction was no longer in government, when the change came, the York brothers came back to Vromi with the court case that they went and fought by themselves, and they won. The judge gave them the rights, and they said that Sun Resorts acted illegally when they bulldozed their snack bar. What did we in Domain Affairs then do? Because this is what the good speaker before me was alluding to. What did I do as the head of domain back then? We sent that court case to Legal Affairs and government, and we specifically asked Legal Affairs, based on this court verdict by these third parties, is it logical for government to do what we call an eigendomshandeling, an act of ownership towards the beach? And in this case, that would be to issue the permission to be on the beach temporarily, which translates to a rental agreement. And the answer of the Legal Affairs Department from government was yes. According to their legal assessment, this is what would be logical. What did we then do as the Department of Domain Affairs? We contacted the then Ministry of Teat. And we asked them, can we get a list of every single license that has been issued from then up to now concerning Mullet Bay? Every single one of them, it doesn't matter which one. They sent us a list. That same list are the people who received a rental agreement that pertained to their license, to the measurements given in their license, to the permissions to operate in whatever activities given in their license. Those are the rental agreements that Minister Kitterson approved, which was dubbed by the Legal Affairs Department. The building permits process is something totally different. And we were not in tenure for that. And that is something that I want the public to understand as well, because there seems to be a misconception as to when you get a rental agreement, you actually get the permission to build. No, if you read the rental agreement, it specifically says this does not absolve you from any other obligation towards the building permits department and all other things that come with it. It's facts, and you can read it in the rental agreement as well. You understand? So when we are here and we are trying to play politics with what is to be, you know, the ownership of the beach, then to me it's troublesome, Madam Chair, because we have an inquiry going on for a couple of years now. And to be honest, I explained the outcome of said inquiry in the last 3 minutes. Who's the owner of the beach? The people. Government is the owner of the beach. We don't need an inquiry to come, you know, to that conclusion, and I still stand by that. Actually, the inquiry should have come, I think it was in June, The inquiry was supposed to be finalized. We are still waiting on that, but as I said, the answer is going to be that government is the owner, because we actually did that through court. You know, so not to waste anybody's time here, but just to make the facts clear, you know, if we want to try to pinpoint fingers, then you should also understand how VROMI works. You know, you should understand the difference between the Domain Affairs Department, the Building Permits Department, and that Domain Affairs is civil law, and that Permits Department is bestuursrecht. But when you love to glorify your own efforts instead of looking at the quality of your work, you sometimes, you know, get misinformation in translation. And that'll be all from me, Madam Chair.
Thank you, MP Peterson. I give the floor to MP Bryson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And predictably, I got exactly what I wanted. An admittance that this whole thing started with rental agreements, very well laid out, to understand that it did not come out of nowhere. Rental agreements were given, and then the people had to go through a building permit process, which they went through. Was a building permit not given for any of those structures, Minister? Maybe not just to, yes, building permit process was done and they were granted building permits? Okay, good. But you see the part of the story that's not told. And this is what happens when some of them, and I'm getting a little tired of this veil of integrity that they try to put on. You see, I also remember another part of that story. When in 2019, I was invited to a birthday party in a house in Pelican. And when I came there, I was actually invited by then minister. And I was shocked what I saw. Because I'm expecting to come and see some beers, some drinks, some waters. But what I saw was a bunch of these files all over the table. And when I walked in, you know what I was told? This is the Ministry of VROMI. That's how decisions were being taken by the one that wants to talk about integrity and all kinds of stuff. That's what happened in that house in Pelican. So everybody need to calm down and chill. Good that some accountability has finally been given about their role in where we are today. The minister has been very clear about his role in how we got here today, and the Minister of TIAT has been firm in saying that this is the end of that saga. No more new licenses are going to be given. That's it. And that is why I believe, again, we get all these answers, make sure the petitioners get some type of final response, and if we want to discuss this further, and I can go more into the stories, then let's call another meeting for that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, MP Bryson. I give the floor to MP Pontiflet.
Yes, Madam Chair, and thank you very much. This is so interesting. I'm going to ask a very simple question because I think the answer was already given, but I believe I need clarity. Maybe the listening audience need clarity. A rental agreement can be given hoping that a building permit will be given afterwards? I don't understand that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, MP Pontiflet. MP Peterson.
Madam Chair, thank you. I'm questioning my colleagues and their overall knowledge at this point, Madam Chair, through you, because of course, when you get a rental agreement, the process after is to get a building permit. Of course, when you get a piece of long lease parcel, the process after is the separate process of building permits. I don't understand why we are trying to misinform the people to do what? So just to put that out there, Madam Chair, a building permit process after a rental agreement, after a long lease issuance is normal. That is a separation of the civil law and the bestuursrecht. Those are two totally different fields, and you have to follow those separate processes in VROMI to get your building permit. Actually, in some cases, if you want to get a building permit, they send you back to the Department of Domain Affairs. So I don't understand where we're trying to take this, Madam Chair, and I also would love to know what happened in said house in Pelican, because a deed is a public document, so I await that as well.
Thank you, MP Peterson. I would look to the ministers for their final remarks pertaining to this. However, based on the rules of the Petitions Committee, I will indeed ask the ministers to provide the answers to the questions and the clarifications posed in writing. Today, we're going to close this meeting because we have to provide the petitions, the requesters and those who have submitted the petition with a final report on all that have been accumulated thus far in terms of information and facts. And if indeed another meeting would be requested, we would honor that meeting. So the ministers indicated that they do not need the floor. So today I would like to thank the petitioners who are sitting in the tribune for attending this meeting, and thank all of the members of the committee and the non-members for having quite a lengthy and very good discussion, I believe, on the topic. And I would now like to close this meeting. Meeting hereby closed.